Hi, welcome to SnappyDragon. In today's video, Wait, stop. You'll never believe what's happened. What's happened? The internet is actually talking about anti-Semitism. Like, they believe us. The entire internet? Yeah, some celebrity said something extra obvious, and it's like now they actually realize it's been getting worse for years. Wait, so you mean I can talk about anti-Semitism and the internet at large might actually listen? Well, your chances are better. Okay, drop everything. It's time. We're finally talking about Jews in period dramas. Right, so recently, the celebrity Ye, formerly known as Kanye West, posted a blatantly anti-Semitic tweet which has brought the continued existence of anti-Jewish bigotry into the spotlight. Ye has faced significant consequences from the resulting public backlash, including the loss of a lucrative deal with Adidas. It should be noted that similarly anti-Semitic remarks from white public figures have not been met with anywhere near this kind of public response. For the moment, at least, the internet seems ready to talk about the rising tide of anti-Semitism, but y'all don't subscribe to me for internet drama, you're here for costumes and history. So let's see if this wave of awareness means we're ready to talk about Jewish representation in historical dramas. Hi, I'm V, noisy Jew, history nerd, and willing to watch just about any historical show or movie with remotely interesting costumes. There's been a growing conversation about representation of marginalized people in period pieces during the last few years, driven by the growing conversation about anti-racism. History was nowhere near as whitewashed as the casting of many historical shows, and having diverse stories on screen benefits everyone. Marginalized people deserve to see themselves included in the genre, and broad audiences need to see and identify with characters who are marginalized in ways that the viewer is not. Within that conversation, let's take a moment to talk about the complexities of Jewish representation in historical shows. There are some unique complexities to Jewish representation because, well, there are some unique complexities to Jewish identity. It doesn't fit neatly into modern understandings of race or religion. Today, the Western world sees Judaism primarily as a religion, but historically, Judaism was seen as an ethnicity and even a race. Depending on the time and place, many Jews who look like me were not considered white, even though they would be today. There have been efforts both within and outside of the Jewish community to assimilate Jews in Western Europe and the US into Goyish society. For the Jews, this could be a survival tactic. From outside power structures, it could rise to the level of cultural genocide. Modern American or Western ideas of Judaism often erase the ethnic component, which will come up later. Let's also not forget that there are Jews of all races who practice a wide variety of Jewish traditions. Most of these are even more underrepresented in historical media, and the representation we get is nearly always of white Ashkenazi Jews. There are several themes I've noticed when analyzing Jews in historical media. Here's your warning. Ahead lie spoilers for, well, assume if I mention a show, I'm giving away plot details. Here's a list, if you want to pause and read. Also, for most of this video, I'm focusing on English language productions because I am an English speaker. We will touch on Hebrew language and Israeli productions later on. A comprehensive list of every episode and movie with my notes, references, and further reading can be found on my Patreon. And also, don't forget to subscribe because there will be more videos about period dramas. They might just involve this show. First on the list is Blatant Anti-Semitism, which I won't spend too much time on because I'm confident you'll all agree it's not okay. We're talking greedy Jewish banker characters, blood libel, the sort of thing you'd expect from a badly done production of The Merchant of Venice. Think Auguste Melmotte from The Way We Live Now, a scheming and deceitful financier of mysterious, probably Jewish origins. There's less of this than there used to be, but there are still plenty of anti-Semitic dog whistles out there. For example, in Red Joan, the Jewish characters are incestuous communists who convince a young English woman to become a Soviet spy. Does it matter to the story that they're Jews? And what associations does this build with Jews if the audience is given no alternative portrayal? Theme number 2 is kind of the opposite. A show straight up tells you someone is Jewish, but you never know it otherwise. Jewish practices are not shown or referenced. The character's Judaism is never fleshed out or explored. A well-known example is the Aldrich family in Downton Abbey. Their nominal Judaism is a source of conflict for the plot, but the most Jewish thing I remember any of them doing is using the word shiksa. We're also told the Countess of Grantham's father was a Jew named Levinson, but this is usually mentioned in connection with the character's wealth. A character's Judaism should not be their entire personality or story, but it is frustrating to see Jewish characters who are so lacking in Judaism. If a show like Downton Abbey is going to use Judaism as a source of plot, there are plenty of opportunities to give it some depth. Maybe Lord Cinderby rejects a dinner invitation because it's on a Jewish holiday. Maybe Atticus talks about the Jewish community in New York after moving there. It doesn't have to be a big deal, but it makes the Jewishness realistic instead of tokenizing, so the audience develops actual understanding and connection. Theme number 3 has been done well, done badly, and a lot of in between. The single episode Jewish character or story. This would be things like Raisins and Almonds from Miss Fisher's Murder Mysteries, the Jewish Peddler in Anne with an E, or Broken Souls from Series 5 of Foyle's War. My issue with these storylines isn't that they exist, it's that they're often all we get. A single episode isn't enough for a full picture of any demographic, but we end up having to hold these brief glimpses to a much higher standard than we would if there was more Jewish representation out there. Making the peddler that Anne Shirley buys her infamous black hair dye from a Jew is a creative way to bring a Jewish character to rural Prince Edward Island. But it's sad that the Jew we see is such a downtrodden figure, even though his friendship with Anne is very sweet. I also enjoyed that one episode of Miss Fisher. It shows several Jewish characters in their own community, all of whom grapple with intra-community conflict on issues 1920s Jews faced. Through that, it avoids the marginalized villain trope, even though the murderer is Jewish. In Foyle's War, on the other hand, the one Jewish character in the entire show is a murderer, which, seriously? You're making a show about World War II and your one Jewish character is a murderer? Which brings me to theme number 4, the Holocaust story. Yes, the Shoah is incredibly important and needs to be remembered, but the way World War II dramas portray Jews is troubling. I want shows about Jews surviving through disguise, like we got a little of in Russian Doll. I want Jewish resistance members, or spies, or Jews in the military. But instead, we get the zookeeper's wife, and the boy in the striped pajamas. These are stories that center and praise white Goyish characters for saving or empathizing with Jews. Said Jews are portrayed as passive, traumatized victims. It's basically trauma corn. You all know what word I mean, right? The one that starts with P and would get me demonetized? Okay, good. The story uses them to make the white Goyish saviors look heroic. Even Schindler's List, an incredibly important Jewish-made film, falls into this pattern, though I think it's very powerful and well done in other ways. But as for the zookeeper's wife, she literally treats one of the prominent Jewish characters like a frightened animal, and the narrative treats this as something to applaud her for. The boy in the striped pajamas has been repeatedly condemned for spreading misinformation about the Shoah. I am so tired of how World War II dramas only show us as beaten, broken, frightened, subjugated victims of genocide. To quote a very important book title, people love dead Jews a lot more than they like to talk about living Jews or happy Jews or Jews who fought back. And that's certainly true of historical dramas. At least the zookeeper's wife cast a Jewish actress, Shira Haas, as the Jewish character in question, which brings us neatly along to our 5th theme. This is where Judaism as an ethnicity becomes important. I just about shrieked when The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel came out and I realized I was watching a period drama centered on Jewish life. Likewise, the BBC series Vienna Blood made me happy in a way I couldn't describe when I first saw it. Here was a spooky Edwardian show with Jewish characters at its center. But what's become more and more noticeable is that while these shows may have Jewish characters, Jewish subject matter, even sometimes Jewish writers, they aren't casting Jewish actors. Mrs. Maisel and over half of her Jewish main cast are played by non-Jews. So is every Jewish main role in Vienna Blood. Peaky Blinders was praised for including a tough, action-focused Jewish mobster based on historical Jewish mobsters. written with concerning inaccuracies, and played by Tom Hardy. We seem to have mostly figured out that it's not okay to cast white actors in black or brownface, but it is rare to see a show cast Jews for Jewish roles. This gets difficult to talk about because, again, there are Jews of all races. Modern Western ideas of race and ethnicity are very focused on appearance. Nearly all supposedly Jewish visual traits are firstly neither uniquely nor universally Jewish. Features like curved noses and curly hair are about as common among Jews as they are among other Mediterranean ethnic groups. And secondly, these features are so bound up with anti-Semitic stereotypes, I'm not sure how they could be respectfully made part of a casting process. This is why I have such an issue with Goyish actors wearing facial prosthetics for Jewish roles. I've heard a lot of debate within the Jewish community about Goyim playing Jews, and I also recognize there might be casting regulations in play. So I guess the best way to explain my frustration is this. My problem is not that this happens ever. My problem is that it happens constantly. Having Goyish faces placed on so many Jewish roles feels like an indicator that Jewish stories need a Goyish mask to be palatable, that they're not wanted if they're Jewish through and through. It also raises questions about authenticity. When and how is it okay for an actor to put on a performance of a marginalized ethnic group they aren't part of? These aren't questions I have the answers to, but they are questions that need to be considered. When we do get a Jewish actor in a Jewish role in historical pieces, it's usually a side part or a comedic role, hardly ever a main character. And I can't think of any times where it's been a lead female character. What this casting trend exposes is that Jews aren't considered suitable for lead or serious roles in historical media. Certainly not for roles where the audience expects an attractive person. It's the same deal as with single episode Jewish representation. If we had more, including Jews playing Jews, it wouldn't be such an issue when it didn't happen. But when it's all we get, it's disappointing. Finally, here's the most common theme I've noticed in historical dramas. What Jews? There are no Jews here. Either the writers completely forgot we exist or are clinging to the idea that diversity in history is a new concept, and there's no historically accurate way to include anyone but white people. So let's get this straight. If your story is set in the greater Mediterranean at any point in recorded history, Europe from the early Middle Ages on, South America post-16th century or so, and North America after 1700-ish, either there were Jews around or there was a reason Jews were not around, and that reason was probably genocide. But honestly, a lot of the talk about historical accuracy conflicting with representation is a straw man. If someone is making a period drama, they are creating a work of fiction. It may be informed by history or an author, but it is fiction nonetheless. So the fictional world they envision is a world with no Jews in it? What does that say? I've talked a lot about Jewish representation done wrong, so I do want to point out a few historical shows that I think get it right. Obviously, Fiddler on the Roof comes to mind. It's a well-known period piece whose writing and initial performances were Jewish through and through. The other solidly Jewish period pieces I know are Israeli productions. The Beauty Queen of Jerusalem on Netflix chronicles women's issues in a changing world while remaining in a uniquely and thoroughly Jewish setting. A Tale of Love and Darkness, directed and starred in by Natalie Portman, also sets family dynamics and mental health against the backdrop of Jewish history. However, neither of these are in English, which is authentic and important, but unfortunately limits their reach. For English language shows, I'm limited to side characters, but I do have a couple favorites to mention. A Discovery of Witches gets points for casting a Jewish actor as Rabbi Judah Loew, a real historical figure credited with inventing the mythological golem. The story connects Jewish myth and mysticism to historical fantasy in a way that remains true to history, the narrative, and the Jewish source material. They also get points for reminding audiences of the anti-Semitism of 16th century Europe without needing to get graphic. Another Renaissance Jewish side plot comes up in The Borgias, where the Pope develops a working relationship with a leader of the local Jewish community. This is not a fun or pleasant or perfect portrayal, but I appreciate that the writers remembered the presence and trade connections of Renaissance Italy's Jews. These Jews were faced with some awful choices, and Christian power structures absolutely did leverage the promise of relative safety for taxation or other economic favors. Yes, the Pope character was an asshole for asking this Jewish guy to assimilate, but anyone who thinks the Pope is an ethically good character in this show is already missing the point. And I think modern Goyish audiences can process this more easily than the identifying dress that was required in Renaissance Italy. It's so hard to enjoy historical media when most of it has these issues, which is why making the Daniel Deronda Victorian evening gown meant so much to me. Identifying with the characters is a fundamental part of how people enjoy all stories, and to do it, I have to shut myself off from remembering that I am a Jew. Otherwise, you try to picture who you would be, and instead, all you get to think about is the anti-Semitism that would be in your way. And it's not a thing of the past. In today's costuming and reenactment communities, it's still in the way. When I performed at Dickens Fair, still on strike, by the way, I had to make a conscious choice to avoid Judaism altogether. I could either reenact a cheerful young woman exploring 1850s London, or I could be a Jew and my entire character would be dictated by confronting historical anti-Semitism. This world held no space for happy Jews in pretty dresses. Being asked to choose between happiness or Jewish identity prevents us from getting involved in reenactment and historical costuming, and even enjoying the shows and movies our Goyish friends do. Facing anti-Semitism in the historical costuming world is a huge reason why I study Jewish history. I'm not going into detail because that's not the point. Calling out public things like Ye's tweets needs to be done, but oftentimes people feel like calling out someone else's bigotry is it. They're done. They've done the right thing. That's not it. Don't look at what other people are doing. Look at what you do and what you can do. The point is that anti-Semitism is not over. It is not rare. Your community is not immune. It is here. It is getting worse, and it will keep getting worse if nothing changes. Anti-Semitism in all its forms makes Jews unwelcome in historical costuming and reenactment, including through a lack of representation. So let's make sure good, fleshed out, through and through representation for Jews is included in the long list of ways that period dramas need to diversify. Like, anytime you look at representation, ask yourself, what's missing? Are there Jews in this show? If there aren't, why is that? If there are Jews, what do the casting and story choices say? What would you say if a Jewish friend asked you about historical costuming? Remember that the problem is not Jews, it's anti-Semitism. And anti-Semitism doesn't listen to us. You thought those tweets were abhorrent? Great. Now let's use that energy. Once again, I have managed to talk for 20 minutes or so without meaning to, so I hope you've got some good questions to ask yourself. Jewish viewers, tell us in the comments about some good Jewish historical fiction. Books too. I am asking because my reading list is too short. Non-Jews, I want to hear what you notice after watching this and maybe didn't notice before. Don't forget to hit the like button while you're there and subscribe for more history rants, Jews in pretty dresses, and history rants about Jews in pretty dresses. See you next time. If anyone needs me, I'll be aggressively decorating my new apartment. Look guys, I have a living room now. Just look at this.